Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Firstly, thank you so much for all your nice comments on the last video. I'm really glad that most of you like this new style of videos that I'm trying out here on this channel. In today's video, I'll be talking about my 2025 budget, which is a video that I've been doing on my channel since I started this. So this is now the fourth time that I've been doing this video. I did one in 2022, then 2023, then 2024. So if you're curious about those videos, you can find them here. But this is the first time I'm filming my budget video in this kind of style. But don't worry, I'll still have a screen recording of a close-up of my budget when we get to it. I've had a monthly budget since I started working, which was in 2020. So it's been 5 years of having a budget, and I can quite confidently say that it has transformed my financial life. So if you're looking for some inspiration to be more disciplined and intentional with your finances, I hope you'll find this video helpful. Just a heads up, I'll be using this template. It's the same template that I've been using since my 2023 budget video, but I have included a new sheet to it. So even if you've downloaded it before, you might find that there are some updates. It's completely free to download, and I'll link it in the description below. Alright, let's get started. As with all my past videos, I always start with a personal and financial background of myself because I feel like that context can help you better understand why I make the decisions that I do make in my budget. Depending on your stage of life, you might have very different priorities or make very different decisions from me. Alright, firstly, I'm 28 years old. I'm Singaporean and I live in Singapore. I've been working full-time for the last 5 years since 2020 when I graduated from university. Aside from my full-time job, I also have some side hustles on the side. I've been doing freelance work for about 4 years now, and this YouTube channel is also one of them. In my family, I'm the sole income earner, and I'm fully supporting myself and my mother, who is unemployed. And finally, I'm also the homeowner of a 2-room HDB, which you're looking at right now. If you're curious about the story of how I managed to get a HDB at my age, I have a whole video on my channel that you can watch. I'll link it in the description below. So that's my personal and financial background. Next, I want to cover some updates in my life that would affect how I budget this year compared to last year. So there are some life updates and also some salary updates. So number one is that I did get a pay raise. So now my take-home salary after CPF is $4,000. And I also have side income from the freelance work that I do. So in total, I have $4,500 every month to budget. And this is $400 more than I used to have last year, which was $4,100. So for the last 3 videos, I've always shared my salaries. To be honest, I'm not sure for how long more I'll be able to share my salary publicly like this, especially now that I'm showing my face more publicly on my channel. I think that changes how comfortable I would be sharing something so publicly like that. And right now my place of work is very understanding, but in the future, if I were to change workplaces, they might not be as lenient. So in future videos, if I'm unable to share so openly or if I'm vague about it, I hope you understand. But as much as possible and for as long as possible, I hope that I can continue to be transparent about at least how much I'm able to budget on a month-to-month basis. I also want to explain a bit about my side hustle income. I think I've mentioned it in passing before, but just to clarify again, my side income is really variable. So there are some months where I do a lot of work, but some months where I do no work at all. But what I do is that any amount that I get from my side hustles, I just put it into a separate bank account, and every month I give myself a fixed amount to add on to my main take-home salary. So regardless of how much I earn every month, I always just give myself a fixed amount. When I started doing side hustles in 2022, I was just saving all that money. I wasn't really using it in my monthly budget or anything. But in 2023, I started giving myself a monthly pay, if you will. So that's the $500 that I give myself every month. So far, this system has worked out really well for me because regardless of how much I earn every month, I still get a fixed pay from myself from my side hustles. But as you can tell, it's not a permanent source of income. So eventually, if I stop doing my freelance work completely, I will run out of money in that account to give to myself at all. But at least for this year, I can give myself $500 every month for the rest of the year. But this might change next year, so I usually reassess at the end of every year. The last life update is that I paid off my study loan last year. So if you don't know, I've been paying off my university study loan since I started working. So every month I was making the minimum repayments to the bank, which was $100. And I also saved up to just pay it off in full because by the end of last year, it would have been interest bearing already. So I saved up enough to just pay it off in full at the end of last year. So that's $100 that I freed up to do other things in my budget. Alright, so next we'll be talking about my budgeting framework. I'm still using the same 5 categories that I've used for the past 2 years. I split up my salary into 5 main buckets. So it's needs, insurance, wants, savings, and investments. The percentages have changed over the years, so these percentages are slightly different from the one I had last year. So for 2025, I'm allocating 30% to needs, 5% to insurance, 15% to wants, 25% to savings, and 25% for investments. I think the main change is that I lowered insurance to 5%, it was previously 10%, and I increased my savings to 25%. The difference between savings and investments is that savings is primarily for short-term goals, so think like your emergency fund or money that you'll be spending maybe could be 1 to 10 years from now, whereas investments is really for retirement. I'm a huge fan of having a framework because I feel like it's such a useful starting point for allocating your salary, especially if you don't know where to start. It also forces you to intentionally set aside money for your long-term goals. Yeah, personally, I've been allocating my salary according to a framework since I started working, and it has transformed my financial life. I think doing it in this way really helps me allocate my salary in a way that aligns with my personal and financial goals, which you'll see later in my budget. And let's have a look at that now. Okay, so here's an overview of my monthly budget. I do my monthly budget planning on Google Sheets. If you want to use this template, I have it in the Payhip link that I'll link in the description below. It looks intimidating, but I'll go line by line. So here is where I input my salary and income, and then it automatically calculates my budget for the month, which is $4,500. Then we go into the needs category. I do have a house mortgage payment, but it's paid fully by CPF, so I don't have to worry about that coming out of my monthly budget. Back when my salary was about $3,000 when I first bought the house, I had to pay out of pocket in cash because I didn't have enough CPF. But over the last 5 years, I've eventually saved up enough in CPF to be able to pay fully through there, so that's made a huge difference. I have this line for outstanding credit card bill, but typically I never have to pay my credit card bill from the previous month with my new month's budget. But I just have it here in case. But ideally, you should be able to pay your expenses for the month with the salary that you received within the month. Next is service and conservancy charges. These are all utilities that I have to pay just for, living in this place. So my S&C charges are $33, which is low because I live in a 2-room HDB. Then I also pay for my own phone plan, the house Wi-Fi, and the electricity and water and gas. So electricity and water and gas, these are estimates. So because you would only know how much you use at the end of the month. This is typically how much I spend on them. So I just ballpark this number in my budget, and then I'll check in again at the end of the month. For my taxes, I pay $22.50. This is taxes for 2024. So usually our taxes for the new year comes out in April or May, so I'll update it when it changes. But for now, this is how much I'm paying. I also have NTUC Union membership, which is $9. I give my mom $150 in allowance, which I just transfer to her bank account. And I also pay for her hospitalization insurance. For my public transport, I budget $120 a month. This is similar to my electricity and water and gas in that it's not confirmed every month, but I just ballpark it there and then check in again at the end of the month. Typically, I try to over budget a bit so that I have room in case it's more than I expected. For transport, there's actually a monthly pass for $128. So if I do go above $128, I might as well get a monthly pass. But so far, I usually hover around the 100 range for my public transport. I also have a joint account with my partner. So every month we put in $200 each, and we use this money for everything that we do together. So meals, entertainment like movies, any cab rides. So this is technically mostly also spent on food, but I keep it separate from my personal food and groceries. Then I also have household spending and food and groceries. So food and groceries is straightforward, but household spending refers to things like dish soap, toilet paper, so stuff for the house that is shared between myself and my mother. So that's an overview of what I spend on needs. Next would be insurance. So right now I have two insurance plans. I have term life insurance and disability insurance. Both are with Singlife. If you followed my past budgets, you know that I used to have a whole life plan under Prudential, and I recently surrendered that because the premiums were $200 a month, and it was quite a strain. But the main reason I had it was because back then I couldn't get term life insurance. So I'm really glad that I managed to, in a way, downgrade, even though my coverage is technically higher. But there are some differences. I have an entire video about it, so I'll link that in the description below. But for now, yes, these are my two plans. And I do want to get hospitalization in the future. It's just right now I'm excluded from a lot of them because of my pre-existing condition. But hopefully that will change and I can at least get a private plan for myself. For right now, I'm relying on MediShield Life. So next is my wants category. So this is money that I allow myself to spend just for the fun of it. So I have my sinking fund and my medium-term sinking fund. The main difference is that sinking fund refers to money that I can spend for the month itself. So say for the month of January, I have $100 that I can spend for fun. Whereas medium-term sinking fund, I put in a separate category because there will be things over the course of the year that I'll have to spend on, or maybe I had to buy something in the month that exceeds the $100 that I allocate for myself. So this medium-term sinking fund is kind of like a buffer. And it will accumulate throughout the year. So say by the end of the year, which is when sales season is at its peak, and when people are buying gifts for the holiday season, then I have this pool of money that I can tap into to buy my frivolous things, and it won't affect my savings or anything. Because this is savings to be spent. Then I also have my language class. I am taking Korean language lessons. I've been taking Korean since 2022. And I really enjoy it, so I always make sure to budget for it every month so that I can pay the course fees in advance when it's due. I also pay $130 for my yoga studio and Active SG, so I just combine the two into one line. My Active SG studio is $30 for a monthly pass, but I don't usually get the monthly pass because I don't go often enough to make it worth it. I just pay for the single entry, but I just put $30 as a buffer because that's the cost of a monthly pass. And for my yoga studio, technically I've already paid upfront for my membership, but this is a bit confusing, but I paid in advance with my side hustle bank account, and every month I pay myself back, if that makes sense. So, you know, the business account that I mentioned where I put all my freelance income into, yeah, I use the money from there. So in a way, I'm taking a loan from myself to pay for my yoga membership, but every month I pay myself back. So I think that just helps with cash flow for me, because at the time I didn't have $800 to just pay upfront for my yoga studio. But it's been working out well because I am regularly giving myself a side income anyway, so it's just that I give myself $100 less because I'm paying back what I took from it. Yeah. So that's how I manage the cash flow. I really like going for yoga, so I don't think this is going away unless I choose to maybe prioritize getting a personal trainer or something for the gym. But so far, having yoga and going to the gym twice a week feels quite balanced to me, so I'm just doing that for now, and hopefully for the rest of the year. Alright, next let's look at my savings. For emergency fund, I've saved up my goal last year, so I don't contribute to it anymore. But I just leave this here in case I need to make a top up to it if I previously used the money from it. I also have this health fund. Right now I'm not contributing to it, but typically I keep about $100 in it that I just roll over into every month, and this is for things like doctor's consultations, medications, just things of that nature. Because sometimes it can be quite a bit of money and I don't want it to eat into my other budgets like my food and groceries budget or anything. If you've watched my 2025 goals video, then these three might look very familiar because they are my financial goals for the year. For holiday fund, I want to save $450 and I'm keeping this money in Singlife because Singlife earns, I think, 3% per annum on the amount that you put inside. So that is one of the highest for the more liquid cash management accounts, because typically for things like holidays, you usually would want to pay in advance for flight tickets or hotel bookings, and it's much easier to take that money out of something like a bank account than, say, a cash management account where it can take 3 to 5 days for your money to come out. So I find that liquidity aspect of Singlife more useful for something like a holiday fund. But my next two funds, which is my medium-term savings and my family fund, I'm not expecting to use this money for the next 3 to 5 years. So I'm okay putting it in something like Stashaway Simple Plus, where it's still a cash management account, but it has a higher per annum projected interest rate, which is, I think, currently 3.8%. And it can fluctuate a bit more, but because I'm not planning to touch it for a long time, I just park it away here. Yeah, so those are my savings every month. Then finally, we have investments. This is money that I'm putting aside for retirement 30 years from now, which is very far away. But yes, I have my Pru Wealth, which is an endowment plan / savings account under Prudential. I put about $200 in it every month. And then I am also putting $1,000 every month into Endowers. So at the end of last year, after trying out different platforms, I decided to go with Endowers because it apparently has the lowest management fees, and their investing philosophy also leans towards more passive index fund kind of investing, which is aligned to what I outlined in my investing video. It's aligned with my investing philosophy, so I've just decided to stick with Endowers for now, and I put $1,000 in it every month. And with that, I have $10.89 left, which is fine. And there are also other parts of my spreadsheet where I track my subscriptions, and these are my contracts with my various utilities. Let me zoom out here. Yeah, I also have this little section where, in case I don't have the side income for whatever reason, then how do I adjust my budget to accommodate that? So I'll just lower my savings and my sinking funds. Yeah, that is my budget for 2025. Not that much different from 2024. In fact, for most of my needs, it has remained the same. I'm trying to keep my lifestyle the same even if I get pay raises, so that I can channel more money towards my savings and investments, which are right now my priorities. But I also want to give myself some room to grow and enjoy life. Hence, I also make sure to give myself money that I can spend guilt-free. So yeah, that is my budget. I want to talk a bit about how I use the template. So the template that I just showed you, that is where I plan my overview for the month. So usually on the last day of the month or the first day of the new month, I will sit down and I confirm my budget, and then I input all those numbers into my expense tracker on my phone. So as for my day-to-day expenses, how I track them is on a phone app, not the sheet itself. I made a video a long time ago about the budget tracker that I use. You can watch it here, but I believe the app has changed a lot since I made that video, but the principles I think you might find still relevant. But for the sheet itself, so what I just showed you is my main overall budget for the year. But every month I will go in and make a copy of that sheet and edit the values based on the needs of that specific month. For instance, some months we have like USave vouchers, or there's like a government payout. I'll update my budget based on those specific changes. Like if I get USave vouchers, means I don't have to pay utilities. So the money that I typically would put towards utilities, I'll redirect it elsewhere, maybe to my savings or my sinking fund. As for the expense tracker, I recommend the one that I use, which is called Money Lover, but you can use any expense tracker that you like to use. It'll be helpful if it has a budget tracking function. So for instance, if you budget $300 for food, you can input that into the app and it can tell you like how much of your budget you've spent so far. So that might be a useful function if you're trying to shortlist a few apps. Another note also is that I do this thing where I try to stay 1 month ahead. So typically companies will pay you your month's salary at the end of the month, maybe like 25th to 27th of the month. So say you work in January, you'll get your salary for January on the 25th or 27th of January. But what I try to do is that the salary that I get for working in that month, I use it for the next month. So the salary that I get in January, I'm actually going to use that salary to budget for February instead. So I'm always 1 month ahead. I find, like, on top of my emergency fund, I also find that staying 1 month ahead makes me feel more assured that I'll have money for the next month, even if I were to lose my job in that month. If you want to try this out, then maybe you can try taking 1 month's worth of salary from your emergency fund and using that money to budget for the next month. And then that way, subsequent salaries that you get, it's always used for the next month. It's not necessary, but it just gives me peace of mind. Usually for my past budget videos, I'll end it here, but I wanted to add this new section for this video, given that it's a new style and format for this channel and everything. And I just want to talk a bit about my lifestyle goals. I didn't know how else to phrase it, but I think the question that I'm sure people will ask is, like, why are you budgeting so strictly? Like, why do you care so much? Why are you so obsessed over every line item on your budget? I think it's a very useful question to ask, and also important that I know the answer for myself. So I was thinking about it. Essentially the question is, why do I budget at all? Maybe there's this bias or idea that budgeting means to restrict oneself and not allowing yourself to have fun. But I don't think that's true, at least not for me. If you budget intentionally and you budget well, then it can be very freeing. But perhaps that's also my own privilege right now, being able to say that, because there is room in my budget to put to things like a holiday or spending on whatever I want to spend on. But it wasn't always the case for me. When I started budgeting, I was really budgeting to survive also, so I know what that looks like. But right now, over time, with financial prudence, now I can budget to thrive. That sounds so cheesy, but you know what I mean? I feel like budgeting now is a way for me to stay disciplined and to look forward to the future and take care of my future self. So yeah, that's why I love budgeting. Like, it's enjoyable for me at the end of every month to, in a way, reset for the new month also and see and give myself that money to spend on myself. And the question of my goal with budgeting and what I get out of it, I was thinking about my 2025 goals, but those are broad goals that I want to achieve over the course of a year. But my goal with budgeting is more on a day-to-day basis, my day-to-day life. With my budget, I'm kind of forced to ask myself, like, what do I want my daily life to look like? What kind of lifestyle do I want that I can achieve with the resources that I have? How do I set up my budget to help me achieve that? I feel like the answer to this question, in a roundabout kind of way, is my budget itself. The answer to the question of how and why I budget is my budget itself. And that's because in my budget, it reflects the things that I want to prioritize. From the most broad goal, which is I want to have enough for my retirement, to things like I want to be able to go for yoga classes, I want to go for language classes because that's something I enjoy. I also want to be comfortable, be able to take the occasional cab if I really need it, or even if I don't really need it and I just want to. I want to feel like I'm living in alignment with my values and priorities. And I'm way more comfortable now than I was 5 years ago, and that's only because I made an effort to continue to grow and change over the years. Yeah, and I do think that everything that I said, it's achievable with the budget that I have set for myself. And I don't know if it sounds like I'm showing off or anything, but I think it's also related to another thought that I had, and that is on finding enoughness, no matter my current income or circumstance. So, I mean, $4,500 every month to budget or to have at all might be a huge amount for some people, but could also be completely insufficient for others. But for myself, no matter my salary, whether it was 3,000 or 3,500 or 4,000, I always try to find enoughness in my current situation. But again, that's not to say that I don't try to improve. I've always been quite aware of like where I would want to increase and grow, and that's why I still make an effort to make goals in the first place. I want to be content, but I don't want to stay stagnant. That's the difference. If I'm not happy with where I am, I hope I have the courage to change it. Perhaps this is beyond the scope of this video because it's not really about finances anymore. It's a mindset thing. The way I think about it is that I want to feel like I have agency over my choices, and that makes me feel like that is real empowerment, right? When you feel like you have the ability to control your own fate. Like I would tell myself, like, I can afford a car, I can buy a car, I can pay for the car every month, but the trade-off is I might not be able to retire if that is the decision I make. So for all my decisions, like, yes, I can do that thing, but the trade-off is I can't do this other thing that I want to do. I think being able to make that conscious decision makes me feel better because it feels almost more powerful than being able to just get whatever I want whenever I want it. Having to make a sacrifice to get something is not always a bad thing. And in some cases, because you have to sacrifice something to get something else that you want, what you do end up getting will be all the more precious. So yeah, I don't know if that made sense, but I hope some of it came through. So yeah, just a final note before I end this video also. I always feel a bit self-conscious because I don't know if people think that I'm privileged or that I'm very poor thing to only have 4,500, but I can't control what other people think, and you make that judgment based on your own personal circumstances also. But all I can say is this: I've been working for 5 years. I didn't start with this salary or this lifestyle. It has changed over the last 5 years, and it will continue to change in the next 5 years, for better or for worse. But right now, this is just a snapshot of my life at this current moment. And I hope wherever you are, you try to remember that. And don't compare it with your life, especially if your life looks nothing remotely like mine. And also don't forget that everyone is on their own journey. I hope this was not too overwhelming. But if you have any questions about my budget, just leave them in the comments and I will try to answer it. If there are enough questions, I could also do a follow-up Q&A in another video answering questions about my budget, because I'm sure I've forgotten to cover some things, or maybe I didn't explain something that you're really curious about. So please leave a comment, let me know. And then if there's enough good questions, I might make a separate video. If not, I'll just reply to the comment directly. If you're curious to see my past budgets, I'll link them below. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye!